Welcome to another episode of How I Discovered My Gift with yours truly, David D. Simons. I'm honored and delighted to have today's guest on. I'm going to read her official bio, and then I'm going to give you something that is personal. She doesn't even know I'm about to say. So Maya Elious is an award-winning business coach, personal brand strategist, and the go-to expert when it comes to clarifying your message and attracting high-end clients. She currently leads a team of brilliant women as the CEO of Built to Impact. I love that name. A coaching and consulting company that teaches overlooked experts how to build a profitable online business in their zone of genius. Through her programs and live events, she's helped thousands of clients and customers get clear on their message, launch high-end services, and build six-figure businesses. She's been featured as a top branding expert in publications like Black Enterprise, Forbes, and Business Insider. Her main mission is to help women monetize their gifts so they can create impact, build wealth, and live well. When she's not helping her clients build their online empire, she can be found traveling, spending time with her family, or watching drama series on Hulu. Welcome to the show, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I have to share with you, like I said, I was going to share your impact on me without you knowing your impact on me. So 2020, during the pandemic, you put up a post that I think pretty much went viral and it was a lot of Black entrepreneurs and professionals helping each other. Do you remember there was a post you put up about if you need something, just connect, put your connect here and somebody else can connect you. You remember
Yes,
that post? Yeah.
yes, I
So,
do.
so I want to tell you the chain of events that have transpired from that moment. Um, while on there, I reached out for help with building my credit. And I
Mhm.
also put that I could help people with webinars, right? And at that time, my business was going through a transition because we were doing a lot of in-person events, and everybody's business was, especially in the marketing world, online marketing world, was transitioning to more online events.
Mhm.
So ended up connecting with a lady. I'll even shout her out. Her name is Heaven. Heaven ended up helping me get my credit right. I ended up helping Heaven get her webinars in motion and help her to have success in selling her credit services. I also connected with a lady named Rosie who then helped me with my email marketing because I always sucked at writing copy, and she helped me for a number of moments. But what I want to share with you out of the genesis of that, um, we pivoted our entire business to webinars, and we help speakers, trainers, coaches, and consultants have six-figure days with webinars. And that was the genesis, and we've transacted over $1 million of business from that moment
That is
of doing
amazing.
webinars, right?
Wow,
So
that is
that's,
incredible.
yeah,
Congratulations, and thank you so
thank
much
you,
for sharing
thank
that.
you.
I love
Yeah,
that.
so thank you for the impact you've made on me. That's why I was so honored to have you on the show as well.
So good. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited to be here. I love that I've been able to have that impact. And I think it just goes to show that you never know, just sometimes just posting is going to impact people in a way that you might not even expect.
for sure, for sure. So Maya, I want to start with childhood. Take me to childhood. Yeah.
Like, are we in therapy? Where we
I
at?
know, right? I want to take you into childhood to because that's where I think a lot of foundations are set. That's where proper and improper, right? And take me to childhood through your journey into becoming who you are from starting from your childhood.
Okay, that is so interesting. My childhood, I was born in Alabama. I lived in Atlanta for a little bit. I grew up in Pennsylvania, a little bit of Philly, a little bit of Pittsburgh. We actually moved around a lot. My dad was a civil engineer, and he worked for an international firm. I think at the time it was Intergraph. He's a civil engineer. And so my sister and I got used to moving around a lot and just adapting to new communities. And just, I mean, I had a really great childhood, two parent household, two African parents. So they were strict. We were very disciplined, a lot of discipline in terms of uh, biblical discipline, like knowing the Bible, going to church, which I'm so grateful that that was my upbringing, and then also discipline in terms of doing well in school, needing to be the best in school, getting good grades. So there was a lot of emphasis on being a good Christian and having a great work ethic, which I think has worked to my advantage. And so I really am so grateful for that. And then high school was really fun. I was such a partier in high school. So, it's so funny when I think about my upbringing and how strict my parents were. And I'm like, I wonder if I would have been less of a partier or I would have been even more of a partier had they not had some rules around what was going on. But, I really enjoyed my high school and had a lot of fun there. And in high school is when I was on the journalism team and I would write for my school newsletter and I would craft the design of the school newsletter and have to like put the copy with the photos. And that was like my first introduction to Adobe. And then when I went to college, I continued designing. And at the time, I was designing MySpace pages. And that is really how I got my start into the branding space with I mean, I loosely say with what I'm doing now, I'm still in the branding space, but it just looks different now. So,
Wow, that's so cool. I can relate to you on so many components, being Ghanaian, and you know, one lawyer, doctor, engineer, accountant. That was the route to be.
yes,
But what route did you go college wise?
I went dropout.
Dropout.
Yeah,
Okay.
I went dropout. So, as you can imagine, my parents were probably. I mean, I imagine that they were freaking out in their head. Externally, my mom was absolutely freaking out. Externally, I thought my dad was going to freak out, and he was actually way more calm. So I was really surprised by their reaction to it. I thought my dad was going to be, a certain way, and I thought my mom was going to be like my safe space to tell her that I dropped out, and it was a little bit of a disaster because I mean I was 23 at the time, so I didn't have the level of maturity that I have now to understand what they might be feeling. I was doing stuff that 23-year-olds do, making decisions that I thought were best for me, which it was a good decision for me, but not really understanding how it might impact other people. Um, and it's just a lesson either way that you got to do what you got to do for you, even if you do disappoint other people, because you're responsible for living your life for yourself. But yes, I ended up dropping out of college. It was the scariest decision of my life, but it was also the most impactful decision of my life. And I've recognized that every time I make a really scary decision, I end up making more money. I end up being happier with myself, with my career, and having more impact as well.
That's powerful. So, like, how far were you into college to, because you said 23, like,
23, yeah, at that point I should have graduated.
mhm.
23 is actually pretty old to be in college. Um, at 23, that was what, my junior year. So I was at a community college for 2 years and then I transitioned to a larger university. And I struggled a lot at the university. I'm like, it was so many people, the classrooms were bigger. It was just a different experience. And I mean, I actually spent a lot of my time at school either lost on what I was learning or partying. So I struggled there. I ended up taking like a semester or two off because of my grades. And then when I went back, I was like, this just is still not working. And
Mhm.
so I ended up dropping out of college. I remember I had a client at the time who he sold parts to large trucking companies like Mack Truck and stuff like that. And I was designing his display for a conference that he had going on in Vegas. It was one of like the biggest trade shows in the world in Vegas. And since I had designed all of his display designs and came through for him last minute, he invited me and my boyfriend at the time to go to Vegas on a free trip. And I'm like, absolutely. Again, I'm 23 years old and I have clients flying me and my boyfriend places. This is phenomenal.
Mhm.
So I had talked to my instructors. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be out of town for business for a couple of days. Is there any work that I can do in advance or make up when I get back? And I remember my instructor for this class, a matrices class, which is like, what is that? It's a type of math class where you do stuff. in a matrix, I guess. And that's what I felt like in college. Like I was in the matrix. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And he basically told me that, I don't know if you remember from school where your best grade could replace your worst grade. And that's kind of how they did the grading system. And he basically was like, well, you're just going to have to fail this. I'm not going to let you take it early or do a makeup. You're going to have to fail it and just hope that your best grade replaces your worst. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And so I just never went back to school from that point on. I went to Vegas, had a good time, came back, and then told my mom that I dropped out of college.
Ooh, wow, you're brave. I probably wouldn't have told them for a little bit. I would have like faked it and did a few things.
Yeah, well, I had to tell them because that was in November, and my boyfriend and I were going to go there for Thanksgiving. So they were going to ask me about school, and I'm like, let me tell them now. So there's no beef by the time we get there for Thanksgiving.
I get it. I get it. So when did so two questions. When did you get like this kind of love, passion around branding? When did you where's the earliest memory that you recognizing it? And two, what is your most dominant gift?
Mm. I think my passion for branding started maybe when I was like 10. I was introduced to the internet very, very early. We had it in my home since I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old. We had a family computer, and I would go on there and play games. I was really fascinated that I could access so many things. And then as I got older, I would play around. I would have like my own Yahoo account. I would go in the little Yahoo chat rooms, which in hindsight was just so dangerous that I was even on these sites. But you could build your own little websites. And I remember like my first website was on this platform called X Pages, and I could just do whatever I wanted on there. And I thought it was so cool. And so I played around with that for a little bit. And then once MySpace and Black Planet came around, I thought it was really cool. I could like create my own profile. And at the time, I didn't know it was branding. In my mind, it was just I can make cool things on the internet. And so
Mm,
I was doing that for my own profile. I had a digital camera. I could take pictures of myself, put it on the internet. Again, hindsight, not very safe, but it was what I was doing and I was so fascinated with it. And then because I was already doing that, creating MySpace pages, by the time I got to college, somebody offered me money to create a MySpace page. And that was my introduction to entrepreneurship. I'm like, I can't believe somebody's going to pay me to do something that I do for fun and for free anyway.
wow.
But they kept paying me and I kept getting clients and I started branding myself. My first company name was called Elious Elite Graphics. And I just wanted to call it something with E because my last name was Elious.
Yeah.
And, very humble beginnings, but I had so much fun. And as I started to mature in entrepreneurship, I recognized that I was doing so much more than just making people look cool on their MySpace, but it was really helping them build their brand. They wanted to create a perception online through their platform. And that's when I started to get a little bit more of an understanding of what branding was.
Wow. That's beautiful. And then your dominant gift. What do you think is your most dominant gift if you had to ask?
My most dominant gift is in messaging, teaching people how to articulate the value in what they do in a very simple manner. I work with experts who have been in their field for 5, 10, 15, even 20 plus years. And there's a gap between how they communicate what they do as an expert and how their ideal client receives it. And because they've been in their industry for so long, they speak in a lot of expert jargon
Right.
and or they'll be very vague about the results that they're able to get for people. And so I just have to have a conversation with them and say, well, what does that mean? Break it down for me. Tell me a little bit more. And what I've recognized too with our gifts is that the areas in our life where we feel like we are inadequate or where we feel we are weak is actually where our gifts are highlighted. Because as I mentioned, I struggled in college because I was in big classrooms and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand what they're talking about. And it's because large rooms and complex ideas can be overwhelming when the person who is explaining that idea doesn't take the time to break it down and ensure that the entire room can understand. And so, with my gifting being in messaging, I'm also really excellent in coaching and teaching in large spaces because I can simplify a complex idea and ensure that the majority of the people in the room understand it.
Yeah.
So, in a season of my life where I felt embarrassed that I wasn't doing in school, actually is what has made me so excellent at what I do, by being able to serve a large room and communicate these complex ideas in a simple way.
That is so profound. I love that. You're so right. It's like the school environment kind of like, in a sense, kind of chokes your gift. Like it doesn't even allow you to explore it. It's not welcomed. This is kind of why we created the show, because a lot of people don't. You don't find your gift, in those kind of atmospheres. You find your gift with like helping and being in the real world. So
Yeah.
when do you think like was the first time you started to if you can remember, or to see that in action, like, oh wow, like I'm really great at that. Like,
Yeah.
when did that hit?
I feel like I started discovering that maybe 2015, when I started to do a little bit of coaching, when I like dabbled my way into coaching. And I recognized that because I was a web and graphic designer, and people would hire me to, build their websites, help them build their brand. And one of the biggest gaps, and anybody that's listening that's a web designer probably knows the pain point of this, but when people hire you as a web designer, they typically don't have their copy ready. And they are hoping, and some people even expecting, that you're going to write your copy for them, and or that you're just magically going to know what to put on their website. As a web designer, there's nothing I can do if I don't have the content. You have to provide the photos, you have to provide the copy. And so my clients would come to me asking, like, hey, well, what should I put on my site? Or I don't know. Or they would give me the copy and I'd be like, this is not good. It doesn't make any sense. And as I was helping clients more consistently, I recognized, like, I do a really good job taking their ideas and making it make sense on their site. So now when people visit their website, there's actually a connection instead of just a platform with words and photos.
Wow, wow, that's a beautiful journey. Like it's something you're passionate about, branding, that kind of led you in from website design to having to get the copy from people. You had to learn how. Wow, I love the pathway to that. So there's a faith-based component too. So how did that get incorporated into the work that you do? Where, to be honest, right? Sometimes if you're just overt about that in the business realm, that can lead to like backslash. It can lead to like also maybe a loss of clients, because there are people that are like, hey, I don't want to hear anything about that. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah.
It's so interesting because my personality type is so rebellious, which is interesting because that's the name of my second company. I have an activewear brand called Rebellious by Maya Elious. And it's like, I didn't really care what people thought. Like, I think some people can introduce faith into their business, especially now, as like, oh, it's a strategy or something that people are going to cling to. Like, it's not as taboo as it was when I was blogging back in 2011 and 2012. And when I introduced faith into my business, there were two components of it. First, when I did it, I just did it because it was me. There was no strategy of like, let me tell people about God. It was just like, I'm blogging about who I am in my real life. So I would blog about what I learned about in church, or I would blog about some things that I read in my devotional. The second iteration of me introducing faith into my business is when my brand started to become more popular and people started to know who I was, and I was now being seen as like a public figure. And I remember going somewhere, I think it was like a networking event or something like that, and somebody meeting me in person, and they were like, oh my God, I'm totally fangirling over you. And I had never even heard that phrase, and I've never had that experience where somebody followed me online and then they met me in person and they were like genuinely excited. I was really new to that and, growing my following. And I'm like, this is really interesting. This is really strange. I'm grateful for the support, but I just didn't know how to handle it. I was a little caught off guard. And then as I'm continuously building my brand online, I'm recognizing like I'm getting a lot of fans. And I was like, I just want to make sure I'm not being idolized. So I'm like, let me tell you about my Lord and Savior, because this is really
Mm.
all Him. And I've since learned to find that balance and level of humility. That's not my favorite word, but for lack of over explaining my philosophy on that, I'll say my humility of learning how to just receive the positive feedback, but still know that I can give the glory to God. So I just introduced my faith because it was something that was natural to me. And then also because I wanted people to know that it wasn't just Maya alone, but the power of Christ in me is what helps me to do the things that I do.
That's beautiful. I don't know why I feel like asking you about this, but um, what is your take on spiritual warfare in business as a front runner for you know doing coaching and involving God? I mean, this is I don't hear people talk about this, so it just jumped in my mind right now as we're talking.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, spiritual warfare, I think there's definitely a level of maturity that you need to have to fully understand it. And sometimes I even look at my level of maturity with my spirituality. I think that spiritual warfare is real. And I think that you're going to run into resistance when you are trying to do something that is bigger than you, which is why you really do need God on your side. But I also see spiritual warfare being used as an excuse to just not do the hard work. And I more so lean onto that side where I'm very intentional about personal responsibility. Like it's one of my core values. And so you're not really going to ever hear me seriously say like the enemy is trying to do this or the enemy is trying to do that. Or if that is the case, then I ask myself, what actions or lack of action have I taken where I created space for the enemy to do anything in my mind where he could infiltrate? So I think that spiritual warfare is it's a very real thing, but I think we can do better as Christians to take personal responsibility for the resistance and the lack of obedience that we experience.
That's beautifully stated. I love that. I mean, and it kind of segues into what we talk about through the process. So this whole show is based off of the parable of the talents, and the one that had one, the one that had two, the one that had five, and how God gave them the talent, aka the gift, and the one that had one, hid theirs in the ground, two and five multiplied. So
Mhm.
this whole show is based on three D's. The first D, discover. What did you discover that God has given you, like you did, discovering this passion for branding, and discover this ability to simplify things that maybe more complex to other people, and God's not gonna Maya, this is your gift, you had to discover it. And then the
Mhm.
second D is develop, right, which is how are you developing what God has given you, and you just kind of talked about it like in personal responsibility. So I wanted to segue into that because there's obviously faith-based principles that some people use on one side for essentially memory verses, right? I know this scripture, I know this scripture, I know this scripture. And some people actually take the principles, and sometimes we see people that are in the kingdom or Christian, they got the spirit of the word, and then we got people that don't know God, and they're out there running and they're killing it in business, killing it in life because they're taking the principles. So, what are
Yes.
some of the principles and the development that you've done in your process to develop your gift to the level it is today?
Mm. I love the way that you explain that because I am definitely the person who lives the principles. I might not be able to perfectly recite scripture, but I know when I open my Bible and I see scripture, I'm like, oh, I've done that and I've been doing that. And then I see people who, yeah, they can recite scripture, and I'm like, well, tell me what you've done. And it's like, okay, you have all of this faith, and it's really you just have the knowledge. You ain't got the faith or the works, because if you had the faith, you would be doing the work.
There you go.
And so I would say that's probably one of the first principles, that I have the faith and the works. And I think that it can just sound so simple, like, yeah, just the faith and the works, the faith and the works, right? But the faith, I was having this conversation the other day about how it's so important how we relate to God and our relationship with Him, because depending on how you were brought up in whatever churches or your household, many of us just see God as a person that consistently wants to punish us or consistently wants to teach us a lesson for being not perfect or whatever it is. And not enough of us see God as a spirit that lives in us and wants to guide us to live a happy, fulfilling, rich life.
Mm,
And so if you relate to God on the first aspect of like, I'm always being punished, I'm not doing the right thing, you are going to treat yourself as how God sees you. You're going to consistently beat yourself up. You're going to live this lack mindset. You're going to have a very limited life in your relationships, in your career, with your money, because you are consistently thinking that you're not good enough or that you're not doing the right things. But if you have a relationship with Christ where you know that his spirit lives in you and that you are consistently being guided to an expansive life, you are going to show up like that, and you're going to show up with a level of confidence. One question that I ask my clients is, if you believe that you serve a God of limitless abundance, why do you keep trying to limit your abundance?
Mm-hmm.
And if I serve a limitless, omnipresent Christ, why would I try to shrink myself? Why would I try to limit myself? It's out of alignment with the person that I say I serve. And so if I'm going to be an ambassador of Christ, then I need to live a full, expansive, and limitless, abundant life.
Wow, that's well said. I love how you broke that down with the perception. That's so real. Because I grew up, African household, so the discipline. So I look at God as like very disciplined, and He is. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but 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 it could be extreme. There's like lack of grace, right? I have a
Yes.
lack of grace in my own life. I don't give
Yeah.
myself much grace, and self compassion. So uh,
Yeah.
that's powerful. That's a breakthrough for me.
Thank
Um,
you. I'm glad.
so so you kind of answered what I was going to segue into, like how does this integration of faith-based principles integrate into your clients? And you shared a great example. So how how do you um in your own development, like behind the scenes? I'm always curious. I've always been a type of person that like I don't want to just see what everybody's doing on social media and doing in their lives and from the front end. I want to know what's behind the scenes, right? Like what are the things that you've done to develop your gifting yourself as a person, maybe coaching that you've put into yourself? What does it take? And for people that see you today and see, wow, Maya's killing it. She's doing this, doing that. Like the unseen hours. What has that been like for you behind the scenes to build up such an amazing brand and an amazing message and serve your clients at a high level? What does that take behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think just developing what I've developed, it takes a lot of making hard and scary decisions and not doing things that are just easy. And I think sometimes we have this false assumption that if God called us to it, that it's going to be easy.
Mm,
And if it was going to be easy, it wouldn't require any faith. It would just require you to wake up and just go get easy stuff. But you have to be able to stretch yourself. You have to be able to push yourself. It's required me to make investments and sacrifices and discipline. It's required me to work harder than everybody else. It's required me to invest more than other people have, invest more than what other people were willing to because they wanted to, come up with whatever excuses, right? It's required me to have a level of faith in myself instead of trying to blame everything on external forces. And typically, what I see, I believe that a lot of Christians miss out on opportunities with their name on it because there is a price point attached to it.
mm,
And because you think it should be easy and because you think it should be free, you are missing out on the fruit of your gifts.
mm,
And I have made plenty of investments, and then if the only thing keeping you from being the best version of yourself is a dollar amount, why would you limit the type of life that you can live over a dollar amount? And so, I tell my clients that there is a difference between hoarding your money and stewarding your money.
mm.
And when you are hoarding your money, you're doing it out of fear. You are nervous about spending it. You don't believe that it's going to come back to you. You don't believe that if you put something out there good, that it's going to come back. So you don't believe in the principle of sowing and reaping. That is what you're saying when you are consistently hoarding your money.
Right.
But when you're being a good steward of your money, yes, you are saving, but you are also investing, right? So we go back to the parable of the talents. You want to be the one, or you want to be the two or the five. And so when you're being a good steward of your money, You're releasing your money with the expectation that you are going to receive the value back. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you have found yourself in a situation where maybe you made an investment in the wrong place, when you are operating in faith, that investment is still going to come back, even if it does not come back from the source in which you made the investment. And so, if you want to see things change with your ideas, you want to be able to develop in your gifts, you have to make sure you're being a good steward of your money, which means releasing it and investing with confidence.
Wow, that is that should be plastered on a billboard in a megaphone. I think everybody needs to hear that over and over again. That's so good. Um, like I want to go back to for you because it probably didn't start that way. Like making an investment that was scary, and you talk about scary decisions, and I like that. Could you go back to a time where you made a scary decision investment, and kind of show talk us a little about through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember, times as I was growing, just growing as an entrepreneur and having opportunities where I could make an investment. Maybe it was a few $100s for a course. And I remember, like, in my pathway, like maybe having somebody that was also growing their business that was a friend or a peer of mine. And I remember them like being too nervous to purchase a course, and I would purchase a course and I would learn more. And I'm studying business and I'm studying marketing, and they're focused on just studying how to get better at their craft, which is fine. But it is also important to learn how to study the sales and the marketing behind your craft, or else you're going to just be a very talented person without clients.
That's
And
right.
so just seeing how I invested my time into studying those things, I saw a really big difference. And I could see I'm further ahead than a lot of graphic designers, web designers, other creatives because of what I'm investing my time to study. And I also remember another time, probably maybe a couple years after that, I went to a business event. It was only $45, and they allowed me to bring a friend for free. So I brought somebody for free. And at the end of that event, they invited us to go to a conference for $2,000. And there was a payment plan option. So I'm like, yes, I'm absolutely in. Let me go ahead and, do the payment plan option for this conference. And the girl that I was with, she decided not to make the investment for whatever reason. Everybody has their fears, hesitations. That ain't my business. I got to focus on what I got going on.
Right.
So then I go to the conference years later. She's in a very similar place in her business, and I have now advanced. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I went to that 3-day conference, I had the opportunity to then invest to work with that coach for a year. And I remember the investment, it was about $14,000.
Yeah.
You could make a $2,000 deposit, and then you would do 12 payments of $997. And I made the deposit. Like, at this time, I was maybe making $4,000 to $5,000 a month in my business. So it wasn't really that much. I was 24 years old. I was the second youngest person in the room the second youngest person in the room, period. But then probably one of the youngest people to make an investment in that program.
Wow.
And yeah, it was scary. I'm looking at my account and I'm like, between all my accounts, we've got to pull some things to scrape this $2,000 together. But it's like, why would I not make the investment in myself? And
Yeah.
maybe I had more fears back then, but again, this was 10 years ago. So now my hindsight is like, duh, pay
Yeah.
$14,000 and become a millionaire. Like, it's the
Right.
easiest decision in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, making that investment. And then I remember other people being in the room, not doing it. And years later, they're looking and they're like, oh, how did you grow so quickly or whatever? And it's like, you need to make those investments, not even just based on the information you're going to learn, but just the energetic exchange of putting your money where your mouth is and saying, I am worth $500, $45, $1,000, 2,000,
Mm-hmm.
10,000, $14,000. It was less about me spending that money to get access to the information and more that I could leave that room and say, I know I am worth $14,000 because I validated that for myself. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't need to look for a client to say that I was worth it. I didn't need for a business coach to say I was worth it. I didn't need anybody else to say I was worth it because I had already proven it to myself by pulling out my credit card and making that payment. And so oftentimes what will happen too is people, I've heard people say this when they join my programs, they'll say like, yeah, I want to invest in you, or I want to invest in your program. And I'm like, you are investing in yourself through my program. And in that
Hmm.
moment, I was investing in myself through that coach and through that program. So regardless of what would have happened in that program, I communicated to myself and my faith and my belief that I am worth that amount of money.
Wow. So well said. I mean, that's it's a masterclass on investing in yourself. That is so like, and I can hear people say, people say that to sell their program. They're not I'm same to you. I've made lots of investments in myself, and I used to think that, right? To be honest, I just they're saying that, but they're not. Like anytime that what you're saying, Maya, what I've experienced as well is really the cheat code. It's the cheat code. It's going to help you to progress faster and get to where your next level with less friction. There'll be friction, but less friction.
Yeah.
So I see this is a just observation, just observing you online, and I see you as a trendsetter, and I can remember moments of things that you put out there, and it's like you see a shift before a shift happens. I don't know if you identify this to yourself as well, but one of the shifts that I recall you putting out there was as coaching was kind of shifting, and there were some things. So I'm gonna speak about two shifts, and then I'd love to hear your perspective on where we're going right now. But as the coaching space, you were seeing a shift. I don't remember when this was, and you put your thoughts out there that it's gonna require people to be more dedicated and committed to their clients, and maybe you might have to do a little more one-on-one. Maybe you might have to get on some consulting calls. Maybe you have to the gone are the days where people are just going to come to you, watch your course or group coaching alone. So that was one shift, and then another shift that I recognized that you had shared was around you growing an empire that you've built and getting away from being in the day to day and kind of pulling back and realize, you know what, I can't do that all the way. I gotta pay attention. So I would love to hear your thoughts on those shifts as well as where you think we're shifting in this space, in this coaching, in this marketing game that is occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember talking about those shifts. I think I maybe posted that in 2022 and just saying like here are the six shifts that I feel like is going to happen in the coaching space in 2022 and 2023. And I think it really just comes down to humanizing ourselves a little bit more, because as industries get more saturated, people are becoming more discerning about where they are making their investments. And so, even though I just said, you're making the investment in yourself through somebody else, but it's like, yes, I want to invest in myself, but I want to make that investment with somebody that I feel confident that can get me to the right place. And so I definitely think that the more coaches or the more competition that's popping up, you're going to have to make sure that your voice and your message remains really relevant. And part of that relevancy is creating connection, humanizing your brand, showing up more consistently, making sure you're top of mind for people because they see your posts or they're getting your emails or they're attending your webinars. So I think just being really intentional about building the personal brand behind the business is something that we're going to see that is incredibly important to still hone in on. And to your point about, just finding that balance of like, well, how do I know when I should be working on my business and I can step away or getting back into my business? It's an interesting game and balance where you have to really just figure it out. And my business grew quite rapidly from 2018 to 2022. It just kept growing and growing. And so I shifted from solopreneur, meaning I was like the face of my company. I was one of the only people working at my company, me and an assistant and like my bookkeeper, to now having coaches under me. And essentially, I went from a coach to a CEO who owned a coaching company. And so I enjoyed, being able to have that shift and really just show up as a leader and a CEO and all of that. But while my company was scaling and it could do well without me, it could run without me, I recognized that it could not grow without me. And so
Mm,
you have to understand the difference of that. Like there's running the company and then there's growing the company. And so when you recognize that there's an area in your business that cannot grow without you, you have to own that role until you master it, and then you can delegate it to other people. And
mm,
so I had mastered the delegation of the coaching. I had mastered the delegation of customer support. I had mastered the delegation of copywriting and the graphics and the website and all of those things, but I had not mastered sales. My company relies on me to generate sales. And so that's when I eventually recognized, okay, I need to get back in my company, generate sales, get clients, so that the person in customer service has customers to serve, so that the coaches have clients to coach, so that the operations manager has a company to operate. And
mm.
so you just have to recognize, okay, what are the areas in my business that I have to master enough to be able to delegate it for somebody else to take over?
Wow, well said, well said. And you kind of like this whole thing has just been Holy Spirit guided because the last D in the whole process is distribution, which is implied. So the discovery, the development, God doesn't give you a gift for you to keep it to yourself. It's supposed to be distributed. So if you have the gift or a talent of design or simplifying things or singing, whatever it is, God didn't create it for you to enjoy it alone. It's for other people to eat from your tree, from your fruit, and so it's implied. It doesn't. Bible doesn't explicitly say that, but we know God's nature through the Word, and so the last D is distribution. So and you just talked about it, right? Like, and you also talked about it earlier, just like talking about you can be as talented as all get out, but you don't have the sales and marketing arm. You're going to be talented and lonely because you gotta build that. So if you could speak to that dynamic of kind of the direction you're already going, um, how important it is to distribute your gift or sell, market, and build that customer base.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important. One of the things that I teach when I'm, teaching my clients how to build their brand is that you can start off building your brand with your passion, but it has to lend to purpose. And the difference is that your passion is something that you love, that you enjoy, that you're doing for fun and for free anyway. But your passion has to serve other people for it to be purposeless. And so if you were just focused on yourself, and what you enjoy doing, and you don't know how to translate that into how can I serve them, then you're going to just be sitting around broke. Like you have to be able to serve people in order to make money and in order to have impact. And so it is incredibly important to understand how your talent can transform somebody else's life, because without that transformation, you're just talented and not impacting anybody.
Mm. What are some of the methods that you've seen for the entrepreneur that's listening to this, and they may be, let's just say they're that web designer that you started out as, and or they're in this phase of design or branding, and they're like, I don't know where to go, how to start, how to get clients. What like looking at the landscape right now? What would you say to them to do to get going?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always start with messaging. Like, that is the foundation. Do you know how to communicate why people should even hire you?
Mm,
And that's really where you need to start. You need to communicate why you're hireable, why people would benefit from working with you. And once you can get clear on that message, then I would say start with your internal network. Reach out to 5 to 10 people in your network and say, hey, I'm a web designer or whatever your title is, and I want to help whoever it is get this type of result. If you know anybody who is looking for a website, or you know anybody who's looking for these specific results, I am doing a free Q&A, or they can book a free call with me, or whatever it is. Create a space where these people can then now get to know you and connect with you, so you can do your own selling on your own. So you can reach out to your internal network one-on-one by people that you know, or you can post it on your Facebook. Like, your initial network is going to be your friends and family. And when you're relying on your friends and family, it's not for them to be customers, it's for them to see if they have people in their network who uniquely need what it is that you have. So I would say your internal network through one-on-one connections, or through Facebook posting online, and then maybe just going some places in person where your ideal client would be spending time.
Love that. It's phenomenal. Good stuff. Wisdom, wisdom. So when you think about like this, because I think you've done a great job of being authentic, right, to who you are. I think you recently even posted about InvestFest, right? And being like, hey, I'm an introvert. This kind of environment is a little bit much for me, and that's a beautiful thing, right? To be authentically yourself, and I think you do a great job of that. So, how do you maintain that authenticity in your messaging while also being effective with your marketing to expand that reach and influence?
Yeah, I mean, I think maintaining authenticity is about being comfortable and confident in who you are. It's not something I need to overthink, like being yourself should be the easiest thing that you do. And when you find that it's hard to be yourself, it's because you're not confident in who you are. And, again, going back to some of the principles and things that I teach when it comes to building your brand, the very first thing alongside the messaging, or right before the messaging, is first identifying who are you? Who are you? And I think that is one of the questions that is just so hard for people to answer. I think it is the number one way that the enemy gets us distracted, by distorting our own image of ourself. And so when you're thinking about your identity, I look at identity as the collection of values that we have for ourselves. For example, as I said, one of my core values is personal responsibility. I am somebody that likes to take ownership. I'm also somebody who's a control freak, which is why I like to take ownership. So it could be positioned as, a positive thing, like Maya is so responsible, but Maya is also a control freak, and she knows that. And I have no shame in it. So I think it's being okay with who you are, the positive, the what could be seen as negative. Maya doesn't do well in big spaces around a lot of people. It can be seen as a negative. I'm okay with that. So being okay with the things that you might feel embarrassed about. You might feel embarrassed about being a control freak. How can you use it to your benefit? How can you leverage who you are, flaws and all, to be the best version of yourself and serve other people? So just getting really clear on who you are, who you desire to be, and who you authentically desire to be. Not who do you want to be so more men can like you? Who do you want to be so you can get more respect from your parents? Who do you want to be so the internet can like you? Who do you want to be because this is internally what you truly desire and it aligns with who you actually are right now. So I think getting very clear on that and getting confident on that, that allows you to maintain your authenticity, because you're not constantly trying to shift who you are by pretending to be somebody that you're not. So
Mm-hmm.
maintaining my authenticity, it's easy because I wake up and I'm myself. I don't have to overthink it. I just who I am. And because I have a personal brand, it aligns with my marketing message, because I'm simply sharing the philosophies that I believe in. Like when I go to podcast interviews, I don't have to overly prepare. A lot of people, they'll send me questions beforehand. It's like, I know myself. I don't need to prepare how I want to answer how I do what I do. So when it comes to your marketing message, you are simply just showing up as you are, sharing your philosophies, sharing some results that you've been able to get for people. And you'll start to see, as you're sharing consistently, maybe how you want to tweak and refine that message, or how you want to package that message. But you're just going to be yourself authentically.
I love that. Wow. Well, I want to respect your time. Anything that people can plug in, that if they do want to work on their messaging, they do want to work on their authenticity, they do want to work on their brand, how can they plug in with you to get some of those things in order?
Yeah, so I actually have a boot camp called Build Your Brand Bootcamp. If you go to buildyourbrandbootcamp.com, I did it live virtually. It was a 3 day seminar, basically on how do you build your brand from scratch, how do you figure out your brand message and your brand positioning and your online presence. And so if you're trying to figure out, like, where do I start? I'm starting from scratch. I have no idea what I even want to do with my brand. I have no idea how to position myself and gain trust. I have no idea how I should be presenting myself online. If you go to buildyourbrandbootcamp.com, you can grab the replay for it, and it's going to be a perfect jumpstart for you to start building your brand.
That's awesome. We're going to plug that into the show notes. um, the last question we have for you, Maya, and you as you said, prepped, like you weren't even prepped, right? It's phenomenal. This question is, what is the difference between one's gift and one's purpose. One's gift and one's purpose.
Mm. I believe our gifts are what we have inside of us and that we are responsible for nurturing and getting better at. And our purpose is when we actually use our gifts to serve other people and create impact.
Love it. Well said. Well said. Maya, thank you so much for pouring into the people. This is phenomenal. I like wish I could grab my pen and paper, but I'm gonna go back and watch again and then get to the pen and pad with the wisdom you shared today. So thank you so much for blessing the people.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.